Got a brand new Jeep.
I look at no one reset them for the stupid daylight savings.
Oh my gosh.
And so and I never like to look at my watch because it's rude or whatever. And so, but I can look at these clocks. And so I was like, how did the time go so fast? How is the 2 hours already over? And it turns out like I had a hard stop because I had to go get my daughter. And I called her and I was like, I'm on the way. She was like, it's not 5 yet. It's only 4. So I had to like stop. I felt so bad.
So did he only have 1 hour then?
So he had an hour and we went a little late. So we had an hour and 20 minutes. And so, a normal session is actually 50 minutes,
Right.
but we were going to do, 2 50-minute. Anyway, so it wasn't really, it was fine, but I just felt so bad. But I was like, who didn't set the clock? I never even thought about that.
Oh my gosh.
That is the very first thing that I do.
But this
Make
is like
sure
some
that
random office that everyone shares.
Wouldn't matter.
So,
I look at the gym. I look
should've.
everywhere.
You
And
look
then
at
I
the
go
gym?
tell them. Yes,
do?
yes. And then I go tell them. If the gym clock is off by 5 minutes, I go tell them.
Okay.
Because
Here's,
when you're running,
yeah.
like on a treadmill, you don't
Watch the
wanna
clock.
do- Yeah.
You got to get to work.
Right.
I never changed the clock, and well, that's weird. I started a timer I started it for 1 minute and 20 seconds. That's not very helpful. So let me reset that for 1 hour. I never reset the clock in our living room. So, which is so stupid because then I panic all like for the whole 6 months. I go, oh my God, it's this time? Oh my God. And then, damn it, I forgot to reset the stupid clock. That one
really
clock. So always when it gets to fall, it's right. So right now,
So now it's right.
correct. And I'm so
is
relieved.
hilarious.
How stupid is that? It would take me 3 minutes, not even, to
Charge
just,
one of your children with that.
yeah, I should do that.
Oh, by the way, I wanted to tell you, this is about a totally different subject. Can I tell you something?
Yeah, please.
And you too. There is a debit card controlled by an app and parents and tied to chores called Greenlight that I just found out about yesterday. There's an app, you like have a dollar amount related to chores and then you put money in it. You can see what they've spent it on. I wanted to tell you because we had the credit session.
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it. So just look into it. I don't know. It's
Green light?
Yeah, it's called Greenlight. There's a monthly fee that makes it not necessarily worthwhile, but maybe it is if you want to like,
That's
just
cool,
open
though.
the conversation.
Yeah. That's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Green light.
Anyway, I just thought of that because maybe you should just charge one of your children with changing the clock.
Right. I don't pay them for chores though. I think we've had this conversation.
I know.
before, too.
I don't
pay them
either,
for
but
chores. They do their
don't
chores
either,
because
yeah.
they live in the house.
right.
And then they get an allowance because they live in the house. I
Oh,
don't
the
tie them
chore
together.
people are going to come after you.
What chore people? What do you mean?
Oh, remember when you said your kids clean the bathroom and everyone erupted on social media?
Not everyone.
Not
One group
everyone.
of
There's a
people
group of
erupted
people.
because they don't think that you should make your children do chores because they're children.
No, or
Oh, I did. I
Yeah.
ignored all that. I didn't see any of that. I didn't
Yeah.
even know that happened. Oh, sorry
I think
for the
it actually
controversy
happened
I
on-
caused with people's bathroom chore chart. But,
I think it actually happened on our page and not on our
Oh, did
post
it?
and not hers.
well,
And it
how are
was-
they supposed to learn to clean the bathroom?
good question.
You start at 23 and just figure. I guess you just figured out it's not
I mean, I
super
do-
complicated.
I know that's like I've told you this before when my 17-year-old's like, well, I don't know how to do the pots. I'm like, you're intelligent.
Right?
Just clean the pot until it is clean,
Yeah.
right? But don't you love it? But I don't know how to clean the bathroom.
I've never done that before. I have two such different kids. Our Mona, who's walking around the studio, has an injured eye. So she needs eye drops and eye gel. And I'm about to go out of town and the girls are staying here with my mother-in-law. And I said to Georgia, so are you going to be able to put eye drops in the dog's eye? And she went, nope, not going to be able to do that. And I went, well, that would be really helpful for me. She was like, Isla does all that kind of stuff. That's not my wheelhouse. I'm not doing that. No. And I was like, okay.
Hi, Mona.
Yeah, don't you want to try to figure that out? She's like, nope. I said, well, what are you going to do when you have your own pet? I'll call Isla to come over and do it for me. I'm like, okay. And Isla this morning, I made her do the eye drops and the gels before school because I leave first thing in the morning. I wanted her to get like 2. She has to do it twice a day to get like 2 times under her belt. Boom, boom, done. She didn't even ask me. She was like, I was like, here's what you do. You open her eye and drop. She did all of it. She just figured it out.
I kind of love it that Georgia was like, Isla does that, and they have that understanding. That's so sweet.
I don't know if it's sweet or if it's teenager lazy or, Georgia's never been as comfortable with our animals, quite frankly. She likes animals, but Isla is you know how somebody is really an animal person. They just have
Yeah, right.
instincts with
Mhm.
animals. Georgia doesn't really have, she's great with them, but Isla has something different. She has some kind of like base caveman understanding of how animals work that Georgia doesn't have. And I'm sure Georgia watches Isla and goes, yeah, I wouldn't do that. That makes me nervous. So,
Especially with giant animals like yours.
Yeah.
I don't have any giant animals.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Also, Mona is tiny.
Well, this
Mona is tiny, but Mona's the only one that would bite or
Oh,
anything. She's
really?
not a biter, but if she doesn't like something, she'll definitely nip at you.
Yeah.
So maybe Georgia's smart. Maybe she, I don't want a
Not
little
that
nip
one.
from the half toothless 14-year-old bad eye dog. Anyway,
We got a kitten. And by we got a kitten, what
I
I
saw
mean is
that.
that I gave my boyfriend a kitten for his birthday and he didn't ask for a kitten. That's what I did. Did
Is
I
he
tell
happy
you
to
that?
have a kitten?
Yes, he's happy to have a kitten.
He's
but
happy-
I didn't give
happy
him
now.
anything else. I gave him a kitten.
that's
I
funny.
was like, there you go. Happy birthday. But the kids, I realize that we have another cat, but the cat is old, 8 or 9, and came into their lives a couple of years ago. And that cat is like huge and attacks people. And so they wanted this sweet little kitten, and kittens also attack people.
Yes.
And so they're terrified of the kitten. It's the funniest thing. I'm like, the kitten doesn't even weigh 2.5 pounds, you
Right.
guys.
And they're
and they have
terrified.
sharp teeth.
And my son one night started just screaming from his bedroom. It was awful. I was terrified that there was something terrible going on in there. And I went in there and he was covered head to toe by the comforter, and the kitten was attacking his feet over the comforter. And it's like, you have to get the kitten out. It was
really funny.
I know.
They might not have that instinct Isla has.
No.
they may not have that gene. They're more
No.
like Georgia.
It's so funny to me. And they'll call me to come remove the kitten from their presence.
That's really funny.
And then my son.
Well, they can stick on you like Velcro.
They
Yeah,
do
they do.
hurt.
And they
They
have those
do
needle
hurt.
teeth. They're like needles.
Absolutely, but you just pick them up and remove them. They're so
Wait, do
small.
kittens lose their baby teeth like dogs, like puppies do?
Yeah,
No.
I think they do.
Oh, do they? I don't know.
Yeah, they
Look how
must.
tiny their needle teeth are.
Yeah, you're
When
right,
have
they
these
must.
they don't grow.
You're
Yeah,
right,
teeth
they
don't
must.
grow. They fall out. The big
They
ones
must.
come in. But Georgia just now this year started picking up our cat. We've had the cat since Georgia was 3.
Oh,
And
wow.
She would not pick the cat up. She loved on him, like wanted him to sleep
Mhm.
with her, but to pick him up and transport him somewhere, pass. Same thing.
Huh.
So odd. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, I was raised with so many animals that
same
I
here.
just- yes, it's going to bite you and scratch you, but just pick him up and throw him off.
And you move on.
Yeah.
And you go
Yeah.
get stitches if you need
And
them.
I mean, they
it's
will-
not a big deal. I don't
They will
understand.
really, like, they get really upset. They're like, we've told him no so many times. He doesn't speak English, you guys.
Right? Bert has this great joke in his next special about Mona. We rescued her, and she was actually in West Covina, but in the joke he says it's in East LA because that's kind of more people nationally would kind of understand what that means. But Bert was like, we figured out really quickly she only spoke Spanish. So we can't communicate with her. We're like training our dogs and she's going, no comprende, no comprende. It's a really funny joke. So I
That's
wonder if that's somewhat true. Not really, but I wonder.
Yeah.
You know, if she was a puppy in a Latino household until we got her, she's got
And all of the commands that she understands are in
Yes.
Spanish. Yeah.
yeah. And then we show up talking English, and she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. If she bothers you, let me know."
No, she doesn't bother
She
me.
will sucker you
She's
into
so
that
sweet.
the whole time you're sitting there. So she's a really sweet dog. But
She is.
yeah, she made the special.
Oh, that's
Apurate,
great.
apurate, he says. Go, go, go. Mona.
Aw.
So what are we talking about today?
We were thinking rules of engagement,
Okay.
like communication
Love it.
tips for conflict de-escalation.
Love it. Bring it on.
I don't know that I have a lot to say, but I have lots of questions on this subject.
Same. I have a lot of comments for
Yes.
people who don't stick to rules of engagement.
Yeah, I have
Right.
lots of things I can complain about.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's funny that you even starting there. I mean, for there to be rules of engagement, there has to be a conversation about we are both going to agree to these.
Right.
Because if one person has them and the other person doesn't either get the memo or agree,
Right.
I mean, it can certainly help for one person to be a better communicator than the other.
Right.
But the point is to actually have a proactive conversation about this is the way we're going to try to resolve conflict when things have escalated into a fight.
Right. So you're talking about really with anybody.
With anyone, for sure.
This is with your children, with your spouse, with your coworker or your business partner, with anybody really, right?
Yeah.
So if we relate this to kids, would it be, I would imagine it would be appropriate for everybody to sit down and just say, okay, here's the rules of engagement in this house.
Yeah.
Nobody
and
hits
even have them
anybody.
where you can see them so that because there are a few things we're going to talk about and you don't want someone to say, well, I just forgot about that one. So if they're right in front of you, you can point.
Have someone take notes.
Mm-hmm.
I have a kid take notes, which they love, I'm sure, from school. But if they take notes, they tend to have ownership of them, I think,
Right.
a little differently.
Yeah.
Our last punishment in this house was about rules of engagement. I didn't use that term, but maybe this is a good conversation to have with you today so I can circle back.
Okay.
We were having people over and my kids were arguing and Isla apparently hit Georgia and I caught Georgia literally draw back and knock the shit out of Isla. Like hit her hard in the arm. And I was like, whoa, we don't hit in this house. This has been the number one rule since you were tiny. No hitting. I'll take your phones. You lose your phone for a week. Go to your rooms. Cool down. We'll talk about this later. They took advantage of me being really distracted, for one. And I think I don't know what happened, how they forgot that. That's been like, Isla was a hitter as a baby. So that rule of engagement has been in place forever. As a baby, when you're a hitter, you don't understand why you're hitting. But I don't know what lapsed in them to totally forget that was always my number one rule. There's no hitting. Like over no shouting, no cursing, no defamation of character. There was no hitting. And they just hit each other.
I mean, siblings just do, though. It's just human nature, I feel like it. I don't know any sibling household where there hasn't been some hitting.
No, yes,
Right.
I know.
And especially when you're not necessarily in the habit of taking the proactive steps to control your emotions before you get to the point of hitting. I mean, I've been there as a grown-up where I want to hit someone, but when you're a grown-up, you recognize that before you actually hit someone and you do something.
But I
Hopefully.
also just think there's this weird sibling thing where we're kind of genetically programmed to be physical with our siblings. I think it's a hard habit to break in that. Not that we don't want to try to break it, but I just think it's...
That's interesting. I wonder if it is something kind of genetic or not genetic or biological or... Interesting.
I mean, those are the people, right, with whom we try out and learn social behavior and boundaries more than anyone else.
Right.
And, even if you look at just like animals in the wild, there's like that roughhousing component. That was actually an article that that I read recently, and it was just talking about, it wasn't talking about roughhousing between siblings, but it was just talking about roughhousing in general, how that is, I never thought about it this way before, but that is actually one of the ways that kids learn boundaries is roughhousing. You're not trying to be mean. You're intentionally being rough, but you're having to read the other person to figure out when you've gone too far. You're having to learn how to communicate in a way that's like, oh, we're still playing. No, you can't do that, which I just had never thought about before. So I just think the first place you roughhouse is with your siblings.
Right. That makes so much sense.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I'm glad I brought that up then.
Yeah.
Because that makes so much sense. It makes me feel better.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think they're doing anything. I mean, it's not right, but I think it's just this like natural thing that comes from like you gotta learn how to do that, and you're gonna learn it with your sibling more than anyone, and you're probably gonna break that boundary or bust through that with your sibling more than anyone too, I would imagine.
Right.
I imagine your girls don't hit anyone else in their lives.
No, I don't think
Right?
so. No.
But it's
just
your
each other.
sister. Right.
Just each other. It's kind of scary though, because Georgia's like 5'8" and weighs, 140 pounds. And I'm like, she's an adult hitting
Right,
someone who's not quite an adult.
Right.
That part is like,
But like you said, Isla
Storming.
hit first.
Isla hit first.
I mean,
Isla hit
knew
first.
She hit someone bigger and stronger. She knows exactly how strong Georgia is.
She may have got that honestly from her mother. Hit up and hit someone bigger.
Right,
That may not be a good thing. Oops. Sorry about that DNA. But yeah, it's a good point. She did hit. Yeah, she was retaliating. Georgia was retaliating because she had been hit first.
I mean, it's actually an interesting thing because I was reading this, and now we're getting a little off track, I guess. But I mean, I was reading this thing from this psychiatrist who was telling a story about how he intervened in a fight that was going on between his two kids. And it wasn't physical, but it was just one of those typical sibling kind of chess games about, who's going to win and that kind of thing. And looking back on it, he realized his intervening made it so much worse. And, it just makes me curious. Not that, I would intervene. I intervened last night, like when my kids do that are too rough with each other. So I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder. George is not an evil person, right? So
No.
what would have happened if you hadn't been there? Georgia had hit too hard. Like, I wonder how they would have somehow worked that out amongst each
Right.
other. Your girls aren't going to hate each other forever, or, devolve into some irreparable.
I hope not. No, I
So
don't
anyway,
think so.
it's just, I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Like, yes, I'm always going to tell my kids not to hit too, but I'm not there sometimes, and they probably play too rough, and one probably gets hurt, and they probably work it out.
Probably. That's a good point. I didn't have any siblings, so I don't have any experience in
Right.
that arena. But that's a good point. That's a great way of looking at that. I don't usually intervene. That was a line for me. There's no hitting in my house.
Yeah.
There's just not. So, but that would have been interesting if I had been able to just stop and wait and listen and see what they'd done.
Did you intervene before Georgia hit Isla?
No.
So
I
Georgia,
saw it.
You saw Georgia hit
Uh-huh.
Isla. Okay.
But I did not know that Isla had hit her first. I had
Right.
not seen that.
And it's impossible not to intervene when you see that, because she's
Yeah.
the bigger one, and it's not okay.
And I'm
Yeah.
the mom, and I
Yeah.
can't be like, oh yeah, just keep hitting her.
Right. Yeah.
Next time, ball the fist up. No,
And to be fair, I did grow up in a household with 3 brothers, and my parents intervened, and there were times when my parents weren't there, and my brothers are in their 40s, and there's still some resentment
really
that comes up even now. Everyone's really good friends and
Yeah.
really close.
Yeah.
But if that topic comes up, like, there are a couple of instances where it's like, no, you shouldn't have done that to me, and you never apologize, and it's still a nerve,
Wow.
30 years later.
Wow.
So,
That's crazy.
I have
Yeah.
that. I have that
You
with my
do?
sister. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
From like college years. And she has it with me from before that.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
I don't have any of that.
So that gets to what we're trying to talk about here is, how do you talk about things that were, when it's really heated, and get to a place where, you can agree to disagree, but that you've heard each other, because that's the bottom line is
Yeah.
like, so when I think about, my 2 brothers or whatever, it's like the things that stay with you for all those years is that you were disrespecting me. Like, you didn't care about me enough, when what the other person just meant was probably not that. You probably didn't mean disrespect. So you have to get to, at the end of the conversation, you want to get to, I took it this way, but you really didn't mean that. You meant this, even if you're still going to disagree. So
Right.
that's, I think that,
So how do you do that? How do you lay that out in terms of rules of engagement?
So the first one, I would say, is the one I always go back to, which is when you're in the heat of the argument, walk away. That is not the time.
Right.
No one can think straight then. So, someone gets to call, you know what? Let's do this later.
Right.
And then you're going to say, okay, well, we are going to come back to this, though.
Right.
We're not going to sweep this under the rug. We're going to come back to it. We're going to come back to it when we can both agree that we can have a rational conversation about it. So that's the first thing.
So first rule is to push pause.
Push pause.
Push pause.
Exactly.
Take a walk.
Can I ask something on
Yeah,
that?
of
Okay.
course. No.
Maybe we're saving questions for the end. Sometimes I think people, it doesn't feel good to push pause when you're like, I have to get this off my chest. I have to say this, right?
But that's the thing about having pre-discussed and agreed upon rules of engagement. Because, like, for example, the way when I'm in an argument and I'm really heated, I want to walk away. I want to run. Like, if I
do
think the
too.
other person's being irrational, I don't want to keep going. I want to run. But my husband wants to keep going, and he thinks it's totally rude and condescending when I walk away. He
Yep.
wants a reaction from me, and I'm trying to not give a reaction. So it's one person. One of the rules is that if one person says, I don't want to do this now, you don't have to. That's the really key rule. And so for the person who doesn't like that rule, you got to, because it's not a constructive conversation if one person doesn't feel equipped to be in that conversation. So either of you and both of you get to say, I can't do this now. And the other person has to be willing to be like, okay. So then,
Great.
That is the
Right?
hardest
That
part,
makes
though.
sense.
that's
I think
it's
it makes
really hard.
I think it makes a lot of sense because I would be the person, and I have been the person that says, we need to take a walk and come back. And Bert is usually the person that goes, fuck no.
Right.
We're getting in this now. And I have to fight with him to stop.
Right.
And sometimes I don't win. Sometimes we continue and I regret it because then I'm not in the place to do, for me, conflict, I need a minute to gather myself.
Right.
I don't, he doesn't need a minute to gather himself. And sometimes he says things he doesn't mean. So actually he does need a minute to gather himself, but he doesn't think he does. He thinks all that he's feeling is 100% accurate.
And some people are just so good at turning things around and making you feel like they're putting words in your mouth. And it's like, it's just not. And like, I don't always think on my feet well enough when someone's doing that to me to be like, well, hold on, I got to pull that apart and like A plus B equals C and I got to lay this out for you. But if you're manipulating everything I'm saying, I can't, I feel beaten already. I can't do it. I just need some time.
So my other question is, and I hate saying this. I hate myself for asking this question. It's the three women in this conversation who are like, I need to walk away. I need to walk away. And it's generally not the men who need to walk away. That's interesting to me. Like, I wonder why that is.
Personality. We're both curious. We're all three curious. We're all three
willing to self-reflect.
Willing to self-reflect.
You think it's personality and not gender?
I think it's I think
it may be cultural too, though, because we want our men to be,
cultural.
like, don't you never back down. Just keep saying it louder till people have
maybe
been
cultural,
convinced.
maybe that we, maybe who we are, personality, maybe it may be gender. I don't know.
And maybe we're
I have a
peacekeepers
thing.
too, where we just,
I'm a peacekeeper for sure.
I have a thing where there's the whole I can't think on my feet that quickly, but also where I feel like it's seemingly an irrational like fear of, there's just this fear where I'm like, I have to get out of this, which I don't know if you guys feel that, but where I just am like, I can't, the only thing on my mind is you have to remove yourself from this situation immediately if it gets too intense.
Right.
So this is a perfect thing that you're saying that, because you and I've talked about this before, and I think that's just yours. That's just something that comes from you. Whatever happened in your life, that's just something that's yours. But
it's a trigger.
It's a trigger, and the other person can't know that because it's not necessarily about what they're doing. Now it's two things. Now they've triggered it, but there's this whole other thing going on that has nothing to do with what they're doing, which is why if you try to talk coherently about just that person's piece of it without letting all this other crap in, it's so hard to do unless you've collected your thoughts and walked away.
Right.
Yeah, I can't.
And then you can explain, then you can help them understand that, like, you did this, but there's a whole ocean of stuff under here that's coming up when you do that.
Well, and what happens if I'm forced in that situation is that my mind goes immediately to, how do I end this as quickly as possible? Which means that I don't actually get the things that I need to say out, because I just am like, probably the best way to end this is to just apologize.
Right.
And then, which is not productive at all.
Well, it's definitely not. You're not taking care of yourself. Your needs aren't met if that's what you're doing.
And I'm not taking care of the other person either.
No, that's right.
Then I have resentment or whatever it is that I'm feeling that I don't
know
resolve.
how to do something differently the next
correct.
time.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they can't learn. They can't adjust, course correct, apologize themselves. Yeah, that's hard. I don't have that fear of confrontation at all. I actually have to maturely make the choice to say, let's take a moment. Because I think my first instinct is to dig in and fight. Like Bert, but I've learned that gets me nowhere fast. So and I've learned that I start saying things that I don't mean or that I don't understand, and then I have to correct later. So I think my instinct actually is not what we're talking about. It is to fight, because when he says something, I immediately my brain goes, "What the heck? I would say this and this and this and this," and I have to stop and then collect and go, okay, here's what's really going on. This is what's really happening. But that's interesting that you don't.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I will also go there sometimes.
Yeah.
If that feeling of like you have to get out of this doesn't come up, then then it's just like I think everybody has that. It's just an ugly progression of like insults being thrown across the aisle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so first thing you do is agree that you can push pause.
Yes.
Either or both can push pause.
Yeah.
That's a great rule.
Yep.
And I want to add to that you have to come back to it. You have to acknowledge, I'm coming back to it, especially if you're somebody like me who just tends to okay, I'm just going to like hope this goes away because I don't want to do it. It's important for me to say, I will come back to this at this time.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. If you can make a date, or you can make a tentative one, or if
Or
you're
10
just
minutes.
too
Or 10
heated, it's
minutes,
just like,
yeah.
hey, we can talk about this, whatever later. But
Yeah.
but we talked about this before, which is, when things get better, no one wants to talk about those things. But that is exactly the time, even though it feels crappy, to take the mood down again. The better you feel, the more likely you are going to be able to be open and hear instead of defensive and
Yes, as will the other person.
exactly.
Be open to hear. It's my opinion that most confrontations are all about timing. It's all about the timing. What place you're in, what place the person you're confronting for whatever issue is in. And if you want a certain result, you have to read the other person and see if the timing is right.
Right.
To me, that's what I do, or that's how I manage Bert anyway, is that I can tell if he can hear me or not.
Yeah.
So, and it sucks for me to have to hold on to something and wait until he can hear me. But really, if I say it at the wrong timing, I'm either going to make it worse or I'm not going to get heard and be more frustrated. So as frustrating as it feels to go, well, I can't get this off my chest just yet. At the end of the day, it's so much better to just wait until I can see that he can hear me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I want to add to that too, that like for me, it's important to, I think sometimes if you wait too long, it gets to that point where it's like bubbling up and you just explode because you're like, I can't hold this anymore.
Yeah.
So like you want to nip it in the bud at like the first hint of something that is a problem.
Right.
Is when it should be on your radar that this is something that you need to bring up.
Right.
I think.
Okay. Next rule of engagement. What do you think?
So now you've decided to come back together and
Yeah.
try. So whoever gets to go first, and it really is a first thing. This is not going to be a back and forth conversation where you get interrupted. This is going to be I'm going to tell you my experience of this so you can understand what's going on for me. But the first thing you're going to do if you're the person who's going first is to try to validate the other person and share your intention with them. So find one thing. So it's like, I love you and I want to be able to find a way to understand that you weren't trying to just be disrespectful to me or hurt me. I really want to do that. So I'm going to be open. So you're saying out loud anything you can find to validate about the person and, just state your intention that you're here for a reason. You're looking for the good.
Right. I want to be understood and I want to understand you.
Yes.
I understand that you are upset as well. And I want to hear what you have to say about that.
Exactly.
I appreciate that your feelings are as strong as mine. And I'm
Exactly.
glad. Thank you for letting me go first. Anything like that.
Even just listening to you say that,
Uh-huh.
that makes me go,
Yeah.
like just puts my hackles down a little.
Right.
It just makes me, like, oh, and you may think it's obvious because you're doing this, but it's not obvious. And like, it's hard to say those things when you're really pissed off.
Yeah, it is.
So to be able to say that and set the tone.
Okay, so push pause, come back to it. Really,
Yeah.
the second one is make sure you come back.
Yeah.
And the third one is to set your intention.
Yeah.
Right? To set
Yeah.
your intention. That's really good because if you think about it, if you have that clear thing in your brain, I'm going to set my intention. My intention is for us to come to a good place with this.
Yeah.
You don't have to say I have come into agreement.
Right. You don't.
Let's come to a good place where we're both good with this on some level, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Are you good with that?
I'm good with that. What I'm thinking about is how that removes what I think is a very common desire to just want to win, right?
Yes.
If one person, even if it's just one person who is saying, I want to come to a good place where there's an understanding between us. Hopefully, if you're dealing with a good human being, they're going to let go of that need to win, which I think is like, doesn't make you a bad person that sometimes you want to win. But
paradigm that is what happens when we get in conflict, right? Is it
Right.
feels like it's a win-lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone has to lose.
Right.
And that's not the case. Even if you're going to agree to disagree, somehow in this relationship, both perspectives have to exist. Both are true.
Yeah.
So it's not, it can't be win-lose. It has
Right.
to be just
Win-win.
It has to be.
It has to be a
and you don't have
win-win,
to give anything up.
Right.
All you have to do is hear the other person.
That's right.
You don't have to give up what you believe, but you can say, I hear that. I understand how that's your take on it. And this is still my take. And I can live with the way it is for you, because that's their truth.
Yeah. It's just true. And to not, I think I try not to blame the other person, right? To say, if you did something that hurt my feelings, to not approach that conversation from a paradigm of blame. Instead, from a place of curiosity and of being understood myself. So if you hurt me, I would like to believe you didn't mean to hurt me, right? So but you did, the end result is I am hurt. So how do I approach that without being, you did this, and you were so mean, and you were nasty, and you said the wrong thing at the wrong time, buddy. And instead of saying, I feel hurt by this, and this is why I feel hurt, and this is how I process this, and this is how I understood you to mean this.
And that's the fourth rule. You just did it. Like,
I did?
You just did it. Talk from eyes. Like, if you can never use the word you, just do what you're trying to do is exactly what you just did, is let the other person understand what was your experience.
Right.
I am feeling really hurt. I felt like I was just being completely disrespected. And when I feel that way, it makes me, and that, like, think of that personal compass we talked about before.
Yes.
It makes me just get like this pit in my stomach, and I want to run away, and I just want to not talk about it anymore, and it makes me just totally want to shut down or whatever it is. But it's like you're not saying you,
right?
It's just, this is what was going on for me,
right,
in my head, in my emotions, in my body. With the reason I was behaving the way I was is because I felt this,
right. So taking the you out as much as possible and keeping it I. Even if you could say, I'm just wondering if you say something like, when this happened, I felt blah, 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 instead of when you did this.
If you can. It's hard.
It is hard, isn't it?
But, yeah.
That takes a lot of maturity.
I think we've talked about this before, and I think it was Brene Brown she wrote an article and probably spoke about how what she likes to do is say, the story I'm telling myself is. So
we do that with each other.
Yeah, I know. Kristen called me the other day and goes,
I do that. I'm like, I have this story in my head that you've totally given up on me and our project because I'm not pulling my weight or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
Like, that's not true. But it's right. Like, I know it's totally my story, but I just needed her to tell me that.
Yeah.
Well, and then it was so easy. Like, I just started laughing because it's so not true.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is the thing. It's so disarming because I'm willing to own, like, this may be just totally me, but that is what you're trying to do.
Totally.
And especially when you're talking about something like your stuff that is deeper, older stuff that you just learned from conflict, that you just don't want to be there because you're going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what you're trying to talk about, is like, this is what's going on for me. And it feels way bigger than this thing that you and I are talking about, but I can't help it. This is what I feel. This is what it brought up for me.
Well, I think it's a real shame that we don't have some classes in public education that teach you how to suss out what you're reacting to. Am I reacting to what's happening today?
Yeah.
Or or am I reacting to this ocean of things that have nothing to do with what's happening today? And how do I separate them? Because that pushing pause for someone who's self-aware, that pause is what gives you the time to separate, right? So you can go back and say, I was feeling this and I was feeling that, and this is the part of it that's mine.
Exactly.
This is mine. It's mine that this triggered all this ocean. But here's the part of it that's maybe ours.
Right.
You know, I try to say ours with Bert. It's not yours. It's ours. Right. This is what we did to get us in this place.
And if you can ever remember back to another instance where you got your feelings hurt or got angry about something and you actually realize now the person didn't mean it. Mm-hmm. Like, we all have times when that was true.
Totally.
And if you can remember that as you're going in and think, like, maybe this is one of those, you know, or maybe it's partially that.
Right.
Then you can open up to the fact that, oh gosh, am I just totally blinded by something that I'm not seeing it how they
It's
saw
the benefit of the doubt, right? To give the person
Yeah.
the benefit of the doubt that their intention toward you was not evil or
Right.
malice, and there was no malice intended. but malice happened, you know?
Right.
So if you separate the intention from the act,
Yeah.
I think it helps dissipate.
It matters.
It matters. It does matter.
Yeah.
Because if he says, boy, your ass looks fat in those jeans, he would probably not mean you are a fat person. He would just mean those jeans are not flattering and said it in an unkind
I would
manner.
no man ever say that.
Yeah, I know, right? I was trying to come up with something on the fly, but I don't know. Bert doesn't ever talk to me like that, really. But sometimes he says stuff. I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but sometimes he'll say things and I'll in my head go, that was so offensive, but I know you did not mean that. What you actually meant was something really constructive. It came out very meathead.
Right.
So, but I give you the meathead because you are mostly meathead.
Right.
And I love that. So I'll give you the pass on the meathead and I'll take what you meant to say. I do that a lot with him. I don't think he does that with me. I think when I say something and I've said it in some not so great way, he's very reactive. I don't get the benefit of the doubt. It's not reciprocated.
I mean, and what would if in the best of times, if you brought that up, not in an angry way, just as a conversation about, we had this conversation about rules of engagement, whatever. What would he say if he heard you say that he doesn't do that for you? He doesn't give you the benefit of the doubt.
Again, it would depend on his state of mind. Sometimes, like right now when we're prepping for a special, I couldn't have that conversation because everything is really intense for him. So he doesn't have a 9-to-5 job. He doesn't have a regular, predictable kind of schedule. So I have to really figure out what's going on for him in his broader life that has nothing to do with our household before I can have conversations like that. There's a lot of navigating for him specifically. But when I hit the right time, he hears me great. He's really great at self-correcting. He's really great actually at doing some stupid thing and 2 hours later coming back and going, I shouldn't have said that like that. He's very self-aware, delayed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's why having a conversation at some point ever, then when you are in one of those times when it's heated, you can be like, you remember that thing I told you about? Like, this will be one of those times when I need the benefit of the doubt. I mean, so I just think for anyone to have a conversation just in general about rules of engagement before you need them.
Yes, before you need them. Well, I'll definitely have this with Bert. We kind of had a rules of engagement conversation, not knowing that's what we were doing when we were just dating. And we had like our first argument, and I don't do well. I didn't at the time do well with arguments because an argument meant that person was leaving.
Yeah.
Like there was there's no middle argument. If I said anything that was opposite to my mom, I was cut off entirely. So I didn't really know how to argue. Bert really had to teach me how to argue. And in the beginning, he said, here's the thing. We're never going to name call. We're never going to defame character. And we're going to try to really hear the other person's side. But I think the longer we're married and the more pressures that are put on a relationship, some of those rules, not the defaming of character or the name calling. We've never done any of that ever. We don't curse at each other.
Because those are rules.
Those are rules, right?
I mean, yeah. 100%.
Yeah, they are rules. No defamation of character, no name calling, no cursing at each other.
Right.
We can curse in an argument, but we can't say, you're a fucking asshole.
Yeah,
We can't do that. And we don't do that still. But the listening to each other rule has gone aside a bit on both sides.
And the thing
too.
in this is, one of the hardest things to do is to say, you have the floor until you give the floor to me.
Yes.
Because when listening to someone, what you're going to want to do is, and someone can have a piece of paper if they want, but what you're going to do is be like, no, and interrupt and, say, but the point is to open up and try to hear the person's whole thing so that you're really getting it. And if you have to have a piece of paper, so that you can make sure you're going back and addressing the things
points
that you want to, that's okay. But the point is, like, let the person speak and try to look at them the whole time and be there, not just remembering the 17 things that you want to hammer back for your rebuttal.
Yeah.
Right.
What if the same person always wants to go first? Is that fair?
That's a great question. I think you should flip a coin or something. I don't know if it doesn't feel fair to the other one, then.
It doesn't feel fair to me because I
flip it.
never get to go first. I have to listen first always. And I sometimes that makes me feel like I am then inherently bad. I am the problem in the situation.
Well, and then also your response is always going to be slightly defensive because you don't get to start with, this was my perspective.
Right.
You start with, this was my perspective. And I also have to like address all of these things that you've thrown my way.
Right.
Probably.
Yes. I always have to go second.
Yeah. And I mean, the idea with going second really should be you get to lay out your experience. You get to lay out your experience without having to address all those things. Like try to hold in your head just how you're going to, and then there's going to be some more back and forth when you're going to maybe still, but maybe not. Maybe if you lay out your experience, then some of those things that were here that you felt like rebutting got seen and understood by this person. And there's less having to, maybe not though. But
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is that both people just get a pass at explaining their experience, what it was like to be in their head
Right.
during that thing. And, you know, and what do they need really? Like, what do you need for it? I mean, that's where you want to get to, right? Is what do you need from the other person in that situation for it not to escalate like that? And 99% of the time, the other person will be willing to give you what you need.
Right.
I mean, I always say there are only a few things that are real deal breakers. And usually it's things like to have another baby or not, you know, like big, huge things like that, religious things, sometimes mother-in-law things. But, you know, usually most things, when you can explain your experience and just explain what you need, then, I mean, you're in a relationship with this person. Mostly people
you want the other person to be happy.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
So
yeah.
I have something interesting that maybe should be added. I think that most people are acting pretty perfectly within their paradigms. So the way that I'm acting makes total sense to me, but wouldn't to you. Like you would maybe read it as Jocelyn is closing down, being dismissive, doesn't care, is aloof, all of those sorts of things.
Right.
Which is not what my intention is, right? That's what my impact is, but not my intention. So I think maybe it helps to have a conversation about that. Like you talk about how people aren't listening, you know, maybe you and Bert aren't listening. That to me suggests that there's like, you know, years and years of misreading a person's paradigm, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so like if you have a conversation about, I'm not doing something intentionally to be mean. I'm doing something because my years of experience as a human being have led me to believe that this is the right way for me to do it.
Right.
And these are all of like, there's all sorts of shit in there and things that are like not right and beliefs that aren't great, but they exist nonetheless.
And they're mine.
And they're mine. And I mean, maybe I'm working on some of them. Maybe I'm unaware of some of them. Maybe they need to be pointed out to me, but I'm not intentionally sitting here doing something dickish. I'm acting perfectly within the paradigm of who I am.
The conversations about, you know, where did you learn how to fight? What did you learn from your mom? What did you learn from your dad? What did you learn from your first relationship? What did you learn from, I mean, those are just full on curiosity conversations, but they're such great conversations to have. Even like, how'd you learn how to express love? You know, there's the whole 5 languages of love, but you know, some people don't say it. Some people do say it. Some people do it with touch. Some people do it with action. Some people do it with gifts. All that is just really interesting stuff to learn about the person. What did fights mean? Do they mean abandonment? I mean, it's, you know, I think those are fantastic when you're getting to know someone conversation.
Yeah. And another one is like, I don't know how to explain this, but what does it mean about you? Like when certain triggers happen, what does that mean about you? You know what I'm saying? Like,
so like when you mean,
if I'm responding defensively to something, why? Like, why do I continuously respond defensively to this particular thing?
You mean within the context of a conflict with your partner, whoever?
Yeah, or kids, or you know, whatever it is. If there's something that's always triggering me, why is that? Because I think it's one thing to know what the trigger is. It's a totally different thing to have it completely resolved.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's very true. Yeah. Are they ever really completely resolved?
I think they are.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. Because I think, you know, a lot, what they typically come down to is just like yours would be a good one. If arguments mean that you're going to be abandoned, like actually just shut out and abandoned.
Yeah.
That would be a huge trigger in any future argument, right? But you don't feel that
that's
now.
True.
Like
yeah,
now
I guess
you don't
so.
have
That's
that.
true.
Now you can argue. So that's a perfect example.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay.
I think some of them are really complex and may take many, many years, but But some triggers honestly are just awareness. It's like, oh, that doesn't mean that.
Right. That's very true also. Yeah.
But a lot of it, I
Totally.
mean, I think a lot of the deeper triggers they come back to things like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, which is like the most common human core belief that everyone has and thinks they're the only one who has, right? But
Yeah.
so that kind of defensiveness that if I lose this argument, it's really true that I'm bad and wrong, so I can't lose this argument.
Right.
I mean, those are big ones to uncover, but they're definitely worked throughable. I mean, people do build a sense of self-esteem that wasn't there before and realize like, oh, this person actually does love me. They're not fitting into that paradigm that I'm not lovable.
Yes, it's true. We kind of look through these tunnel vision goggles, right? Because we only have our own experience. And if your experience as a child is not super positive, you have to learn that you can have positive relationships in places where you never have.
That's right.
It's something that you really have to learn. And learning that causes you to engage in a lot of trust. And
Which is really hard.
it's really, really hard. Yes, it's really hard.
to trust when the world hasn't been trustworthy.
When it's been proven
Right.
to be untrustworthy from your, especially for me, from my core source, from my mother.
Right.
So if she showed me the world is not trustworthy, you do really have to trust yourself and trust another person, which is very difficult, I think, sometimes. So these rules of engagement would be really helpful, especially for someone that came from a traumatic background, to say, here's the safe, boundaries under which we're going to argue, because arguments are part of life, you know, and normal, resolved, moved through arguments are actually healthy
Yeah. And help.
and
Because
create
both
growth.
people understand each other
Yeah.
and their own selves better.
And makes you deeper, makes your relationship with the other person deeper, if you can be brave enough to do that. I think a lot of people don't have the tools to separate past from present.
Yeah. Or mine from yours a lot of the time.
Oh, mine from yours.
Because I always think about that in
that, yeah.
relationships. You kind of said it earlier, but there's mine, there's my husband's, and then there's ours.
Right.
And I think we interlock, like we do that with people who we are in relationships. We are oddly a perfect fit a lot of times. And sometimes it's our positive that's a fit, but sometimes it's our negatives that are, that are matching.
Right.
So, but it's not always, couples counseling is not always the answer. There's a lot of times there's stuff that this person just needs to go and do for
Right.
themselves,
Right.
To
To probably function within the context of almost any couple.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some
exactly.
people
Yeah.
would need to work on that for any couple.
I mean, I think most people need to work on, they've got their own stuff that they need to work on.
Everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody. There's not one person
everybody.
on this planet that doesn't
Everybody.
have something to work on.
I think that I am so aware and constantly trying. And I mean, it is every day there's something where I'm like, oh, Jesus.
Oh,
Like, I really need to.
totally. I had a ton of bricks dropped on me the other day that triggered something so old and so involuntarily triggered it that I was angry that it triggered me so badly.
Mhm.
I just really was like, damn it. I've been working on this my whole life. And this one thing just totally wrecked me. For like 4 days, I was wrecked. So as much as you think that this process has a end date, it doesn't.
Or
It's
even
your
a
whole
linear
life.
progression.
Mhm.
because
No.
sometimes it just
No,
Yeah.
that one moment in time plummeted me like 5 years old. It's 6 years old. And I was like, I've already done this. I've already dealt with this. I'm already past this, but it's
But
not
there
true.
there are neurological, physiological reasons for that. I mean, I always talk about that book, The Body Keeps the Score, but he does such a good job of explaining it. I mean, those memories are embedded in our physical bodies and in our brains.
Yeah.
Like there are neurons that are there. And so, I mean, when we're taken back to those things, it's just they're there and we learn to do better with them. And sometimes I guess we outgrow them or they become not triggerable anymore, but it's still like they made a mark,
Yeah.
physical mark in our bodies and in our brains.
I guess it's a physiological reaction
Mhm.
to something happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't really think about it like that.
Yesterday I was getting my hair cut. So I've been working on.
Which it looks fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been working on, like, and Kristen knows this, so hard on like being assertive in situations where there is conflict. And sometimes I am amazing at it. And then there's just like this kind of, and I haven't quite figured out why, sometimes where I'm just like, oh God, I can't deal with this. And I was getting my hair cut. The guy was washing my hair. Lovely man. Nothing to be afraid of. The water was cold as hell. And he was like, is the temperature okay? And I was like, yeah, it's great. What? And then I'm in my head, I'm like, no, you have to tell him. You have to tell him. And I couldn't go. It's a little cold.
How funny.
It's fucking insane that I can't just go, actually, it's a little cold. Could you turn it up? And the longer that I went without telling him, the more I was unable to tell him.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It's crazy.
But see, what's so
And
funny, I
that
would
sort of-
never think that would be a
Never.
challenge of yours in
Because
a
you want to
million
know what?
years.
In so many ways, it's not. But
Yeah.
then there are just certain instances where I'm like, oh God, don't like say anything that, why would he even care? He's asking.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And it like so made me realize how much work I have to do. And I'm like, when I talk to Kristen about it, I'm like, I'm just going to like start doing it in the small, easy ways. Right there.
Could be much smaller or easier.
Could not be smaller.
Can I make you
easier.
happy? No, I'm happy. Terribly unhappy, but I'm happy.
Fucking chilly as hell.
Well, I have to say that makes me feel better because I do things like that too, where I feel like I am so evolved in a lot of ways. And in some ways I go, why did you do that? Why
Yeah.
can't you just do that? What's the problem? Yeah, I think everybody probably has that if they're self-aware.
Well, and
Right.
you know what I notice about myself, which is just really ugly, but I notice about myself that my first reaction to things, whatever it is, anything that goes wrong, is I want to blame. I want to blame someone other than myself. I don't do it, but I think it's fascinating.
That
Isn't
you
it?
of
That
all
even
people.
still, I'm like, who can I blame for this? And then it's like, what is wrong with me? Thank goodness I'm aware, but I
Yeah.
think it's fascinating. That's my first place to go. It couldn't be my fault. Like, what
Couldn't
is
be.
that?
That
is that?
fascinates me to no end with almost everything. Growing up in the South, there's racism everywhere. I mean, there just is.
Yep.
Mhm.
And sometimes I will have a thought that's very not appropriate or how I feel or in alignment with me or my life
Yeah.
or my behavior. And it will take me so off guard because it's the culture I grew up in.
Mhm.
And I'll
Yeah.
have this thought and I'll go, oh my God, I can't believe I just thought that. And I don't even believe that.
Right.
And I don't
right,
even
right, right.
live that. I mean, I don't even have that anywhere. How did that come? Where did it come from? It upsets me so badly. Sometimes it doesn't ever, I'm not walking around all day having these terrible thoughts.
No, but
Right.
if you do have them, yeah, that
From time to time,
course,
I go, I mean, there's a lot of racial statements I grew up hearing as part of the vernacular, or someone would say, you're old as dirt. They had a lot of racial sayings like that. And was something will happen. That's not a racial statement, obviously.
yes, right.
But that will pop in my brain so fast that I can't stop. I can't stop it because I'd heard it so much as a child.
yeah.
And that really bothers me that my brain hasn't flushed all of that out because I don't believe any of that stuff and would never, ever, ever use any of those
Mhm.
things that I
But
heard
that's
growing
why
up.
I think, we have the power as humans to witness our own minds and then choose our responses.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you're fine. Cause I've told you I had like, psychotic anxiety with postpartum with my first child. And
Yes.
so, that means that I would have these thoughts that I just was like, how is that in my brain? How
Yeah.
is that thought? What is wrong with me that I'm so broken that thought would even get in my head? But the point is, sometimes just those things are there, and as long as we can witness them and still have power to choose how
Yeah.
we respond to them, that is where all our power lies. And I think sometimes when you hear those people and they get really drunk and they go on these rants on telephones or messages or whatever it is.
Yes.
It's like, maybe you shouldn't drink because that's prohibiting that that filter.
Yeah.
that's choosing your response.
The stopgap.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. I was just thinking about postpartum anxiety
You are?
because I had like a little flashback of it with my kitten.
With your kitten?
I did, and I was telling Daryl about it because that is like postpartum anxiety is these awful thoughts about not just what could happen to your baby, but what you might do. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it, but you're like, oh my God, what if I do this horrible thing? And it's like crazy stuff that you would
really crazy.
never
Yeah.
do, but it's in your head and you can't do anything about the fact that it's in your head.
The problem with those kind of thoughts is that the more you push them away, the more they want to come. That's just how the brain works. You have to give your brain something else to focus on. You can't not think a thought, or your brain's like, I'm not thinking a thought, I'm not thinking a thought, I'm not thinking a thought. It's, it's horrible. It's horrible.
And I know, and they're thoughts that like aren't any behavior that you've ever engaged in and never would engage in.
Right.
And so it's like, but I had a couple of those with my kitten, and I was like, how am I having like postpartum anxiety about it? I know. And it was just a couple of days. And I thought, and that one you're so able to witness, oh, that is like
But
so
you did
not
just
going to
explain
happen.
that trauma is physiologically in your body. So your postpartum was just being triggered.
Exactly.
All that.
By this tiny little
Well, the lack of sleep.
Lack of
and,
sleep,
Oh
yeah.
God, and that kitten, that did keep me up. But I had some of those thoughts, and that I just thought was funny because I was like, it's a kitten. It's not even like,
It's okay. I have it
And
too
this
with the
kitten
puppy.
triggered.
The puppy, I do the same thing. I go, why did I do this to myself?
Yeah.
Why did we get a puppy? Seriously? Oh, it's like having a toddler. Now I'm back on someone else's schedule. What was I thinking? I love that stupid puppy.
yeah.
But it does kind of throw you back a little bit
Totally.
into feeling all those feelings when you really were in the weeds and couldn't get out and, off in a ditch in your brain, and when you just had a baby. Just having a baby is a whole different conversation. We should do a podcast about that.
Yeah.
Postpartum, everything.
Mm-hmm.
It lasts until they're like 4 too.
It lasts forever until you sleep regularly.
Yeah.
I think.
It's the sleep. I don't know if I said this before on here, but I can't remember who I was talking to, some doctor, but they were talking about, the PTSD in combat vets, and that one of the worst things that happens is actually the sleep dysregulation, that having your circadian rhythms disrupted for so long, because if you're a Navy SEAL, you're almost always up at night.
Yeah.
That's when you're on high alert, hypervigilant at night. And it just, when you do that long term, that's one of the most damaging aspects for those guys. And it's once your sleep is disrupted, you can't just, great, now I'm retired, I can sleep now. You can't, but they have lots of ways now that they can help regulate sleep. And it's one of the single most healing things you can do is just get your sleep back on track.
Isn't it interesting they didn't do studies like that on
Moms.
women, on
Right.
moms, on new mothers, and how
But you know it to be true, right? I mean, it's just the
100%.
worst thing ever.
It's terrible. It's why we're tribal, because people could take turns in the tribe,
true.
staying up with the baby, and we don't have that now. And now, as one person, usually, if you're breastfeeding, I mean, why would I get bird up?
Yep.
Right.
The baby needs my boob. You sleep
Yeah.
all night. At least you can be present
Yeah.
and accounted for in the daytime. It's terrible, that sleep disruption makes you a different person.
Oh, it is no good.
It's no good.
I remember that I found on when my second was born, and he was maybe like 4 months old. I found the journal that I had kept when I first was born, where I tracked everything, like when she ate. And I remember seeing that at 6 months, she was still up like, 2 or 3 times a night, and being like, no way is this still going to continue for at least 2 more months. But it continues for so much longer than that.
Yeah, does. I know Bert, we were just talking the other day. Bert said, when Isla was born in the hospital, the first time she cried, I remember him turning to me and going, why did we do this again? Why did we do this to ourselves again? We're now signing up to not sleep for like years. And she didn't sleep through the night till she was 4.5.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
Junie not
so
until she was
long.
5.
Yeah.
I mean, she would just wake up, scream out, and then go back to sleep. But it lasted for years.
No, Isla would wake up at between 2 and 3 and go in the living room and start playing.
Oh, geez.
So I'd have to listen for her to get up so that I could get up and go, no. All I had to do was go, no, honey, it's the middle of the night. Let's go back to bed. She'd go right back to bed, go right back to sleep.
But now, do you hear everything in the middle of the night now?
Not
still?
anymore.
See, I still have those mommy ears, which is so annoying.
It is annoying.
Things will wake me
I
up.
don't.
No, I don't. If people would leave me alone, I would sleep like the dead. But I have cats and dogs in and out of the bed, husband in and out of the bathroom. When he's not home, I sleep like so great. But he doesn't sleep through the night, Bert. He has to get up and go to the bathroom, and he's not super quiet. He's not super dainty on his way to the bathroom. He's kind of like a bull. So I don't really sleep well either anymore or still. Okay, so rules of engagement. We're going to push pause. We're going to agree to come back. We're going to have someone go first
Set the intention.
and set the intention. And then we're going to keep it I focused, no you focused. Any other rules?
And
of
so then
engagement?
there's no interrupting, no name calling.
No interrupting, no name calling.
And then you...
No hitting.
There's... And then you want to get to the place where both of you say on some level that you feel like the other person has gotten something. So you're trying to validate something about what the other person's saying so they can at least feel like you heard them.
Got it.
Again, you don't have to give anything up in terms of what you really believe in. You don't have to lose. You can agree to disagree. But the idea is for the other person to let you know that they heard you, which can be, it helps to say it back, like, well, so what did you hear? Well, I guess, or something like, I can understand how if you thought that I was disrespecting you, then you would have, I understand your reaction now because that would have felt really, really bad. And I hope you know that I would never intentionally disrespect you.
Right.
And maybe, then or you can get to the need part. It's like, specifically, what do you need from me either now, both, now to feel like you're heard and we can close this conversation, or in the future. And maybe it's, whoever it was thought that sarcasm was okay in that instance, but like, it's just not, I don't want you, don't be sarcastic in front of those friends. It hurts my feelings. And so I need you to try not to do that. And the person can say, I'll try, or, no, that's part of my act. I'm going to be sarcastic and but to state your need. And then you want to get to the point where the other person acknowledges that your need, may or may not be willing to do it, but also that, hears you. And so that you can feel like there's nothing left that's still like, you're not getting this.
Right. The one thing, that's when Bert relaxes in an argument, is when I've said, let me make sure I understand you. You just said, when I said that, I hurt your feelings. You just said this. I try to use, as best I can, his exact words back, to not put words in his mouth, to not use my words, but to use his words and say them. And when I do that, his whole body relaxes. So what I would try to do in this scenario is probably start with that in the beginning if I was the person going first. Let me make sure I understand how you feel, or this is what I think is going on for you, and here's what's going on for me. And then once he's explained what he feels, I would try to repeat it back to him so that he knew that I got it.
So, I think because you know him well enough, I think, and that works for you.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say about, leading with your interpretation of the other person's experience is that you're going to do that, and then you're going to tell yours, and they're going to be sitting there because you missed on theirs a little bit, and they're dying to tell you.
Good advice.
So, to me, I feel like just stick to your own story first.
Yeah, good advice.
Then let them have theirs, and then you're trying to match up. Okay, I get it. Let me show you that I understand your experience.
That makes sense. Yeah, he probably wouldn't like that.
Because if you miss just a little, then it's like, oh my God, I gotta tell you what.
Yeah. That's true. Okay. So save my experience, but in the end, in the wrap up, I would try to repeat back what he said verbatim. That doesn't mean that you agree with it.
Right.
It just lets him know I've heard you, because I've heard every word, or almost every word that you've said.
Yeah.
Exactly as you've said it. Maybe it puts him, because when I do that, I literally see his whole body just relax. And he stops being defensive immediately. Yeah. He's not that fun to fight with.
I mean, is anybody?
They never are. My husbands.
Like
right?
I feel like there are some people, like you two both, are people that if I had an argument with you, it would be super easy, right?
It would be lame.
It would be so
don't
easy.
think
I
it
know.
would happen.
No, it
I
would
know,
be
well,
totally
I know.
lame.
If I know, it would be super lame. But yeah, it's never fun. Fights are never fun.
But usually, like for me, I'll just speak for my own experience. The thing that really just triggers me is when I feel like, Michael's the best person is my husband, because that's the person that I've had the most arguments with, is just when I feel like he's just being irrational and like so not, like what he's talking about is just so untrue. Like, why would I ever want to do something that would set him off? That used to be the old one. I'd be like, this is not fun for me. I
Yeah.
spend my life trying not to make you angry. Like the
Right.
fact that you think I would intentionally
Intentionally,
do
yeah.
something to piss you off, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So my point is like, it's when you're dealing with someone irrational or something that feels irrational. So the taking the time to calmly pick it apart, even your own side, it's like, well, it was when this comment brings up this in me, you know? So, and like, so you're saying like repeating it back verbatim, it really does. It's like being an anthropologist. It lets the other person look at, oh, so it's that, or because there are 4 people here, 2 of them being my parents, it brings up all this stuff for me that I'm not being a good enough mother, well, you know, whatever that is. So it's just like to pick it apart and then have the other person repeat it back really, I mean, as verbatim as you can, then it's like, oh, now we're putting all the pieces of this puzzle together.
We're on the same page.
Because he's
heard
not
you.
being irrational from his perspective.
You got to assume neither person is,
Yeah.
right? And that's
and
why,
he thinks you're being
But they
irrational.
are.
Yeah.
right.
But they always are.
See, I don't
Screw
agree
their
with you.
paradigm. Screw
I
their
don't-
I'm joking, obviously, but yeah.
right.
Yeah, they from their perspective, they are functioning from a rational, healthy, emotional place from their perspective.
And the reason that I don't think the 3 of us would get into an argument is because, well, one of the reasons is because we deal with each other on, like, there's not a lot of opportunity for those undercurrent issues in our lives to come up, right? But with your spouse or your boyfriend or your partner, whatever it
Or
is,
even your kids.
or your kids, now there's that whole ocean we were talking about again,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
stuff that's there that's going to be, it's like, what are we even talking about? You're
Right.
not even talking about the same thing I'm talking about.
Right.
And so that's why I just think like to have the rules really helps.
So if you apply this to your workplace, right?
Mhm.
Say you are a realtor and you're part of a team and you're assigned this team. I don't even know if this really exists like this, but if you're assigned a teammate that you have to work with, that you're having conflict with, right? You could still do this exact same
Mm-hmm.
method, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Of sitting down and saying, I see that we're having disagreements often. So let's lay down some rules of how we talk about these things and just do the same exact thing.
And
right?
what you want to make sure you get to is, so what do we need from each other? What do you
Right.
need from me
Right.
in going forward in just not just only how we communicate, but just how we interact with each other that will help us both be able to just do our jobs.
Right. To find the win-win.
Mm-hmm.
I think in life and everything, you should try to find the win-win, not just in conflict, just in life in general, because
Yeah.
wouldn't that what you want, to make the other person happy and be happy yourself at the
Yeah.
same time? So, yeah, I would think it would be really hard to be partnered in a job with someone because you wouldn't have chosen that person. You
right.
choose your spouse or your friend. You don't really choose your kids, but they're, typically end up being your or your husband's DNA or some combination of.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of know what those animals look like to an extent. But to have a partner chosen for you, I think would be really difficult.
Well, especially when, I mean, if it's your spouse or your partner that, in your personal life, you pretty much can often get them to want to improve the communication too, want to have these kind of conversations. But if you're in a business partnership with someone who seriously, let's just say for the easy word that everyone likes to throw around, narcissistic,
Yeah.
just someone who's just not ever going to be self-reflective,
Right.
never going to own their own stuff,
Right.
not going to want to change their behavior.
Right.
Is-
What do you do?
I mean, the only thing you can do is just figure out what's in your control and take care of yourself however you can. I mean, there are certainly boundaries you can draw. There are things you can do, but it's hard. And then in that case, you can try to have one of these conversations, but it may not get anywhere because what you're asking is for someone to actually care enough to get out of their own head to
Right.
want to see your side. And, some people just don't. Most people do.
Yeah. To want to be accountable.
Right.
To be accountable means that you have fault and you have successes. You have both.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be willing to own some yucky parts of yourself.
Totally. Don't we all have them?
I mean, but some people aren't going to admit it.
Well, yeah, I guess so. All right.
I have a thought on this. And I don't know if this falls under this heading, but do you have anything to say about like when you let things go and when you don't?
Oh, I'm glad you said that because I
Are
thought that
you
earlier.
good?
So sometimes Sometimes
Yeah.
Bert will say something and I'll go, I'm just going to let that one go. I mean, I'm not going to even address it and it'll never come back again. How do you know?
But do you really? I mean, because you are either keeping that little secret tally in the back of your head, or you're not.
No, I don't do that. I don't think. I don't. Maybe I do, and I don't know I do.
Well, you would know because it would come out in a fight.
No, I don't do that.
There would be those things that you store back there
No,
for when
I
you're
don't-
really mad.
You don't have things that he does that have like a cumulative effect of, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's like a tally in your head. It's just not how I would say it. But like, to me, that bugged me. And it's like, it's bugging me because it's happened before. Right? That doesn't happen.
I guess so, but not. Yes. I mean, obviously,
so
he does
fascinating.
things that bug me he's done before that bug me, but I always feel like if I don't address it, that's on me.
Mhm.
Like
Oh,
he
that's good.
he
Mhm.
can't do something he doesn't know about.
Right.
So
yeah.
I don't really build things up to then all of a sudden now I've exploded about something he's done repeatedly. Because if he's done it once and I let it go and he's done it again, it bothers me again, I tend to go, okay, you either have to choose here. You either let it go, really, because then that's how can he fix something he doesn't know about?
Right.
Or you need to tell him about it.
That's such a good perspective. Yep.
I mean, I did that
Yeah.
when I married him. I was like, okay, he's a slob. You can't marry this guy and go, now I need you to be a neat freak.
Right.
You
yeah.
need to be okay with that because that is who he is and what's happening.
Right.
And
yeah.
then if you're okay with that, then you can't come back and say, this is making me miserable. That's not fair. That's not fair to
Such
the
a
other
good
person.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's really unfair. So it's the same in an argument too. I can't blame him for something he doesn't even know I'm upset about. I couldn't do that. I'd have to, that would be my fault. Then I look at that behavior as like crazy behavior to
Right,
me.
yep.
Where I go, well, then you're crazy if you can't.
But I mean, I used to before I had good communication skills, and I mean, looking back on it now, my husband would agree that the way he was seeing the world, like it was his stuff, it was his insecurities that were making him irrational. And so because I knew that it was deep stuff and it wasn't really about what was going on, and when I would try to have the conversations with him, I would get nowhere.
Yeah.
So I just started just letting him go because I didn't want the conflict in my life. But
Right.
that did not serve me.
Really?
His insecurities weren't getting better, and I was just getting more and more kind of disempowered and resentful, and just like stuffing it down and never getting the satisfaction of having a real conversation about it. And then when we would fight, it would just be this kind of explosion on my part because I could never get anything resolved. I could never really get heard. And
right.
when he finally, went to therapy and we went to couples counseling and all that, and now he's worked through all that stuff, he can say, oh my gosh, wow, I don't know how you must have dealt with that. That must have been so hard.
Right.
But it's, pretending like I wasn't keeping a tally and letting things roll just to keep the peace.
Right.
That is not sustainable.
Right. No, that definitely
It's
would
just
not be
not.
sustainable. Maybe I do that and I don't realize it. But we
But
don't
no,
have
because you seem like you guys address the stuff. You seem like
we
you
do for the most. Yeah, for the most. I mean, there's definitely stuff that from time to time, I will get really frustrated about stupid stuff. Like his underwear all over the house, and that's part of the piece where I get frustrated that I've backed myself into a place where I've accepted this human as who he is. And now I can't completely say, could you pick up your goddamn underwear? Just pick up your underwear. Because that goes against. Someone was reading this book. She called me, Kathy Mose, a regular guest. She called and she was like, I just read this sentence in a book that reminded me of you. He said, the people have the hardest time in life are the people who are focused on integrity, because then they have to carry this integrity. And I hear you talk about that a lot. And I think part of the things that back up on me with Bert goes down into that. I said I would do this way. So if it bothers me now, that's my problem, because it goes
that's
back to that integrity piece of I knew I walked in this relationship eyes wide open.
Mhm.
So I can't now be out of integrity
Right.
with that decision. That's something I struggle with a lot in a lot of ways, is that in setting my integrity and then being inflexible with it,
Mm.
Because
that just makes me wonder if, can we change at all? Can
Yeah.
over the course of a 30-year marriage, 40,
Right.
what are we allowed to, like, how does that integrity piece? Because I totally get what you're saying and admire what you're saying about look, I knew who he was, so I can't ask him to be different.
Yes.
But where you but then you use the word rigid. So where could it serve you to be less rigid? Can you give an example of that?
I'm super curious. I don't know where would it serve me to be less rigid with my own integrity?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because
That's a really
here's
good
the
I mean,
thing.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
Here's the thing on this. He can be a slob.
Yeah.
And you can be somebody who lives up to your word of, I'm going to accept this person. And you can also sometimes go, and sometimes I'm going to explode and be like, pick up your fucking underwear just to get it off my chest. All of those things can live together, right?
Well, I have had a conversation with him actually really recently. And I said, I said this exactly. I did agree to live with you as you are. But it does cause me to not be able to live as I am. So it does affect me when I come in my bathroom and your backpack is in my sink. That affects me because now I have to move your backpack. We have 2 sinks. One's yours, one's mine. And you put your stuff in my sink. That affects me. And I try to accept it. But over time, it does make me really upset. I've said that. So I've not asked him to change, but showed him my perspective. And actually later that day, he cleaned the bathroom and his closet. I was like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. I have to walk through your closet to get to my closet, and your closet is a disaster. And so I walk in there going, oh, it's so unnerving for me to live in such chaos. But you require living in chaos is how his brain works. He has to see evidence of himself or he feels like he's disappearing. Where I feel like I want order and things put away, which is not evidence of myself as much. It's different evidence. I'd have a chosen piece of evidence, a photograph, piece of art, where his evidence is his underwear and flossers and ear cleaners and that shit everywhere. And so I have said that, and I have had times where I've expressed myself, and it affects change in the moment, but the change never lasts.
Right.
But I don't seem to have a cumulative like, okay, that's it, I'm leaving.
No.
There's none of that happens. But I have been able to say things like that. So maybe my integrity stays the same, but at least I've spoken about it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And I do think that some conflicts are not wrapped up and put away. It's like we're living in this space with different people who have different needs, and sometimes the conflict is just not going to get 100% resolved.
Right. Well, I know Bert was, when he was on Travel Channel, he was suffering from some PTSD. And he was having arguments with me that were ridiculous. Like he, at one point, called me in the bedroom like this on vacation. Come here right now. How dare you bait our daughter's hook in front of me? How dare you do that? And I was like, what are you talking about? Do you even know how to bait a hook? What are you talking about? You were on the porch like 50 yards away. How were you supposed to, but should I have stopped and said, honey, can you come bait a hook for me? What are you talking about? It was so irrational and insane that in that moment, like you're talking about with Michael, you're going, this is not about me.
Right.
The ability, I think it's hard for a wife or a spouse or a partner to separate off and say this really has nothing to do with me at all. But it's hurtful to you. It's hard to, how do you then go back and get yourself cared for when that has happened later? Do you know what I mean? How do you do that? I've sort of been able to do it. Years later, I jokingly said to him, do you remember that argument you had about baiting a hook? And he has no memory of the argument at all. None at all. And he was at a level 50 of 10 in that argument where he was like, I've married the wrong person. Clearly I've married the wrong person. And I'm like, cause I baited a goddamn hook. Okay. All right. Somebody's a little kooky. Maybe you should seek out some therapy. It was the next week. I was like, I think you need to go to therapy. Cause I knew there was something else. This was so bad. And then he was diagnosed with PTSD. And I went, okay, that goes in that little box. That goes on that little shelf. Yeah. But I still had feelings about it. It's still very hurtful for your spouse to go, I've married the wrong person because you baited a hook in front of me, How do you, as a person, get that handled?
Well, I mean, now, like when you went back and said he doesn't remember the conversation, and explained your experience, didn't he not say, oh, that must have been...
No. Oh, no. He was like, wow, I was really bad. That's about it.
But
Well,
that's
yeah,
his way
yeah.
of saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
he
it was really bad. Yeah, he
you
was
know.
really bad. So I guess he did.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what everybody should do. Or is that right? Or
If there is that list in the back of your head
yeah.
that really feels unjust and you're just not going to be able to let it go,
Yeah.
it's worth bringing up in the context of not these are the 75 things I've been holding on to for 10 years that, make you totally unworthy. No, but just, it's-
Prioritize, maybe.
yeah. And, once someone can do it once, demonstrate that they can see your side, some of those things just dissipate because you're like, oh, okay, we're on a different, let's start fresh now
Yeah,
and see.
yeah.
And now if something comes up, then we'll take it from there.
Right.
And those things, you don't have to, they just pile up when you're never getting any validation about them.
Right. Right.
And likewise, I want to say that when you're on the other side of it, when you really think, oh, I didn't behave well in that situation and I regret my choices, I think it's worthwhile to talk about it more than once. It's not just one apology in the heat of the moment. I think it is like follow up on that. I personally think, because I think oftentimes people don't really hear an apology when they're in that emotional state. And so it lingers with them.
That's a really good point. I think Bert would appreciate it if I did that, because I don't do that. I don't usually follow up later. I don't have a hard time apologizing, but I sometimes have a hard time being completely vulnerable, especially when I've done something really wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time letting myself be wrong. Does that make sense? I don't try to be right, but I have a hard time going, yeah, that was really bad and I'm really sorry. And I do have a harder time with that.
And I do think sometimes like we apologize for part of it, but then the next day the person's like, oh, and also this and this. So it's like, you want to just be like, okay, yep, you're right. This and this.
Yeah.
Like I see that with my kids where I was not on my daughter's side recently about something. I accused her of lying and she was not lying at all. She was in fact like speaking up when someone should speak up. And that she had so many feelings with that.
Sure.
Like I didn't trust her. There's so many, like there
Didn't
were a
believe
lot
her.
of apologies there that I had to make. Yeah.
Yeah. Over several days.
Over several days. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mom. And then this.
And I mean,
then
yes, you
this.
don't want to let them, turn it into this long laundry list of all things that I've ever done. But she legitimately had big feelings over being accused by her mom of lying when in fact she was doing something very brave and
Wow.
And frankly, even the long laundry list, like if you're in the mode of apologizing, there's so much power in that. And I think for our relationship with our kids, when we do it, even if like, give me the laundry list, fine. Like, cause it's not like they always get it. And I just think to see an adult be willing to actually just go there and be like, yep. Wrong
Own
about that
your
too.
mistake.
Yeah, because there are going to be plenty of times when you're going to put, the
Sure,
rules
you
down
just-
again, and they're going to be mad, and you're going to be right, and you're not going to apologize. But I don't know.
sure, I don't want to encourage like the constant revision, revisiting
what you're
like,
saying, yeah.
all of these injustices where it's like, okay, eventually you have
Now
to-
she's a
I mean,
victim.
she's still mad at me about something I did when she was 2. And I'm like, we are done with this.
Right?
We are so done with this.
How funny.
That is
Yeah.
funny.
So I'm curious to know when my kids are older what they say to their therapist about me.
I know. I think about
Does
it
that
all
make
the
you
time.
care?
Yes,
You do?
I think about
Okay.
it all the time.
Because I think I have to be damaging them. I mean, on some level, even if
I
it's
just
minor.
disagree.
You do?
I,
Good.
I disagree.
Please disagree with
because
me.
it goes back to the good enough mother, right? You're not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to be sometimes wrong and sometimes you mess up and mostly good and
Yeah.
mostly self-aware and mostly willing to own it. And sometimes just you're not supposed to be anything other than just doing the best you can. That they genuinely know you're doing the best you can and you're human.
Yeah.
That's the best thing for kids to learn because that's life.
Yeah,
right?
it's true. Yeah.
And I think you and I have that thought because we have shit and get with our parents, but like you're not in therapy over your parents.
No, I had fantastic parents. I mean, I still had crap that I created
Sure.
in my life.
Yeah.
But not because of them.
Right.
And I mean, oh, sure. Could I go do I parent exactly how my parents did? No. Could I pick them apart? Why? Like,
yeah.
it was,
That's
know?
probably where my perspective comes from then, because
Yeah.
I keep thinking there's got to be something. I mean, there's got to be something. Here's a piece of it, I guess. There's got to be something I'm screwing up that I don't even know I'm screwing up, because I have no good example, right? My example has come from my own brain and my own reading and research and talking to other people, but it's definitely not what I lived. So then I feel like there's something I'm missing, or there's something that I'm doing wrong, or something like that.
so the only data you have to judge that really is just your kids. Like how are your, if your girls seem appropriately emotionally stable and engaged in life and communicative and all those things, then
I'm good.
Then what else,
And you can ask them, what am I screwing up? You might not agree.
I
with
thought
what
you-
I
I'm not
say.
going to ask them. I
talked
just
about
told you my vulnerable place is admitting when I'm wrong.
Oh
No,
no!
I'm
Now
joking.
you have to.
I'm
ask that.
joking. I'm joking.
No, I thought I thought you asked something similar to that.
I do. Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
I have. I've asked them, if there's anything I'm doing wrong. Yeah, as a
think
parent,
you
I've asked you
did.
that exact thing.
Yeah.
And I do have conversations with them. I'm much faster to apologize to them when I've done something wrong, I think, than I am to Bert even. Yeah. So yeah, I guess. But
And-
there's that little fear, when you grow up with trauma, I think you wait for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
That makes
Constantly.
sense. Yeah.
I'm constantly going, when's the other shoe going to drop? It's dropping. It always does. So I feel like there's something I'm missing, and that shoe's going to drop, and my kid's going to end up,
But my thing is that you did not get many of your important needs met when
Right.
you were young.
That's
and
right.
so it goes back to the same question, which we talked about this last time, about how our kids really on some level know what they need
Yeah.
at any given time. And so to ask them, like, what else do you need? What do you need from me? What do you need from your dad? Just that, if you're doing that and actually listening and doing the best you can, like that's the crux of the matter.
Yeah, I am doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I am telling them what they need sometimes too. Let me tell you what you need. You need a nap. Stat. I do that a lot too, which is good, I think. Sometimes I wish my mom would have said, you need a nap.
Yeah.
God, wouldn't it be great if somebody was just like, no, you have to drop everything you're doing. Go take a nap. That'd be so great.
You need to eat. You are hangry. Please put a sandwich in your mouth. Quick. Stat.
I had such a great little conversation with my daughter. This is not about conflict really, but she has in her head, and she got it from like a book or a show that she watched, that sometimes moms make their daughters wear dresses.
Mm-hmm.
And it's come up several times, and I've never once made her wear a dress, but she's going to her holiday show. And I said, what do you want to wear? And she said, sweats. I want to wear sweats. And I said, well, you can't wear sweats, but you can wear like black leggings. I can get you some black leggings. And she's like, oh, I can't believe you're going to make me.
Uh-huh.
Right. Okay. So I was like, we argued about it. Eventually I won. And then I was like, what am I doing? So I'm like, hey, actually, I changed my mind. You can totally wear sweats. You wear sweats. And she goes, really? And I'm like, yeah, you can totally wear sweats. And she goes, wait, why are you doing this? I said, because the minute that you show up in sweats, other people there will comment on the fact that you are wearing sweats, and you will realize that it's really not appropriate to wear sweats to your holiday show. And she goes, could you buy me some leggings, please, Mom?
Oh, I see your perspective.
So perfect.
That was perfect.
I was right. After she was like, can't believe you're making me do this, I was thinking of you. I was like, transfer responsibility.
Yeah, because she's got to find out the hard way.
I know. And I
Yeah.
just flat out told her that. I was like, you're probably going to get sent home. I mean, can't show up in sweats.
Right?
Her first response was, fine, I'll wear leggings. And I was like, no. I do not want to make you wear leggings if you have that attitude. And then she goes, please, Mommy, buy me leggings.
Good deal. Good deal. That's good.
It was pretty funny.
So good.
Yeah.
'Cause
That's
I
really
mean, I
good.
have, 20-year-olds in my practice whose parents never gave them choices, like the opportunity to make those choices for
Mhm.
themselves. And so it just breeds not only just resentment, but resistance. So these kids just are automatically resisting every bit of control that they've had on them, and not connecting that well, sometimes their parents actually have a good point, but they can't see it because when you're just in resistance, like she would have missed
The lesson.
anything about like sometimes what other people deem as appropriate attire. You don't want to be, you can be, but you don't necessarily want to give that message to them. Maybe they'll think it's disrespectful, feel odd yourself. All
You're
those things.
going
She
to
would
end up
have
feeling
missed it
uncomfortable,
all
yeah.
and just thought, my mom's mean.
Yeah, my mom's
And there's
making
so
me
many
do this.
things in there. And it like, I just...
That's interesting you say that, because if you're not given choices, you can't build resilience
No.
because you can't make mistakes.
So you're like infantilized, right? You're
Right.
Just but you're pissed.
Well, yeah, because anytime you're infantilized, which is a great word,
Right.
you are oppressed.
You are oppressed.
So what happens when you're oppressed? You get angry.
Right.
You can't move. It's
Right.
like someone holding your arms together your whole life. And at a certain point, you start getting really mad.
But then you don't have any good way. You're not even capable of making good decisions because you've missed all those little things about
Yeah.
why
Tools,
the
right?
decisions are right or better or whatever. So now you're just this little like juvenile, immature person
Right.
in a bigger body who's just pissed at the world, who doesn't actually have, like you said, good decision-making skills or resilience or any of those things.
Yeah, resilience has to come from making mistakes.
Yeah.
It's the only way you can build
I
it.
mean, that might have been the best thing ever to show up in sweats and then she become the best dressed girl at school.
I know.
Just after that,
Right.
You know?
Isla and Junie are very similar.
Oh, for
in that
sure.
way.
In there.
Yeah, she's that way too. With everything, I have to go, here's the context in which you can dress.
Yeah.
You can go from here to here, anything in between. I don't really care, but it's got to fit in this box. And she'll always figure it out. So same thing. But then I put it on her. You figure it out, but it's got to be, you can wear jeans and you can wear a dress, but you can't wear a hoodie and you can't wear sweatpants, but you can wear it in this box, and she'll figure it out by herself. And she'll always show up and be glad that she did that. But
Yeah.
that was really good that you did that with Junie.
Then I asked her what she wanted to wear on top, and she said a sweatshirt. You can't wear a sweatshirt, but I'll buy you a comfortable sweater.
Let's start this conversation again.
She was-
It applies to the top as well as the bottom.
She was joking when she said sweatshirt. It was pretty funny.
That's really funny. Okay, that's really funny. Anything else we can say to wrap this up? Because I know we have a heart out today, which is good, but we're coming up on our heart out. So anything else we need to say? Should we reiterate the steps? I felt like
Dog is fantastic.
I love this dog.
she's
right?
so happy with you.
great.
Look, her tongue's been out of her mouth
I
for
know,
a
I
full
love
hour and a
the
half.
tongue out of her mouth. It's so great.
She's such a senior dog, this one.
Aw.
She's 14, we think. And like the past 6 months or so, she's really showing her age,
Aw.
where she's a little limpy in the morning because she's a little arthritic, and that tongue never goes in the mouth anymore. One eye's blind now, and the one we're having to treat. And, she constantly, I'll catch her looking at me like she's going, huh? Huh? Like that's her entire inner monologue is, huh? She's the sweetest meatloaf of a dog.
Aw.
And she would sit here with you literally all day. She'd skip a meal for that.
But that's what we always call it, dog time. Like
Yeah.
if I tickle my daughter's head or something, and then she's like, "You can't ever stop." Oh, it's dog time. You just can't ever stop with a dog.
Well, personally, I'm going to have this conversation with Bert next week after the special is in the bag, because I feel like we've been arguing not as healthy as we used to argue in the past. We're not unhealthy married. We're not unhealthily married. We're happily married, but our arguments leave me frustrated a lot, and I end up going to my therapist and talking to her about it and getting heard with her, which some of it I will still have to do, because some things I don't think. That's another thing I guess we should have talked about. I heard on this podcast, I think it was Hidden Brain, this guy talking about, it's a very new concept that your spouse is your everything. That's not an old concept. A spouse used to have very specific roles, and you got your needs met by other people, by going to church, by your girlfriend's playing bridge, by whatever your outreach was, but it wasn't all from that one person. So now suddenly we have this paradigm that that person's supposed to be everything: our best friend, our listener, our bridge partner, our everything. And there are some things that maybe is not super healthy with. And I use my therapist a lot for that. There's some things that I don't need to talk through with him. I just need to talk it through. And I don't talk it through with my girlfriends because I want to talk about more fun things. So that's her purpose for me, not entirely, but partly, is to go and say, if I have to pick up one more piece of underwear, I'm going to shoot him in the throat with an arrow. I'm so done. Just to be able to feel those feelings freely that he doesn't need to hear. So in some of this rules of engagement, that doesn't have to do with how you engage with your partner, but I wonder if there's any piece of that applies in an argument with your husband. You know, obviously you can't tell because you don't know what the person's arguing about, but if there's a time where you go, you know, I need to work this out on my own. I guess that's goes in the ocean of feelings. Does this make sense?
Well, yeah, it does make sense. If I think I hear you correctly, is that when you get down to what do you need?
Yeah.
Then sometimes the other person doesn't really want to or isn't the best person for getting that need met, and that's okay.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Or you know, like maybe like it happens a lot where one person needs time with friends, just needs away time away from the partner.
Yeah.
And the other person doesn't.
Right.
So that's going to be one of those big ones because this person may think it means you don't love me enough to want to spend all your time with me. And this person, it may not mean that I don't love you. It means this is just how I work.
Yeah.
I need friend time.
Right.
So now we're not talking necessarily about, you know, how we communicate, but you're going to get down to those needs. And that's what a relationship is all about, is balancing getting people's needs met. And there are some needs that we're going to meet for each other. And there's some needs that you can go meet on your own and some that I can meet, but you know, whether or not you said this thing where people are in relationships now where they need their spouse to be everything.
Right.
Great. I know people like that. If both people are okay with that, that's fine.
Right.
I couldn't do that.
No, I
but
couldn't
that's
do that
just so just make sure you're in the relationship with someone who's got the same set of needs around that.
Right.
That comes up with couples where one person is like, oh, I'm going to go travel with my friends. And the other person is mad.
Yeah.
Right. That does come up where.
Yeah, that does happen.
That's a difficult dynamic.
I think it would be a difficult dynamic. You have to be the right type of person to be able to do that, you know, on both ends, to be secure enough to go, oh, he needs to go on a tour bus for months and months at a time, and I'm cool with that. And him to go, well, I'm cool with her just leading this boring life because mine is fantastic. I mean, that's, I think, the dynamic that happens in my house. He's cool with me being here. And just, I don't really want to go on the road, and I don't want to do what he's doing, but I have no problem with him doing what he's doing. But I don't know. I thought that was an interesting thing that podcast said, because I thought, I don't get all my needs met from Bert. I couldn't possibly. He's not here. So, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I wonder if other people know that that's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I watch people sometimes in these relationships where they're literally always together.
Yeah.
Never even on a phone call. You get both of them. And it's just interesting because I think like, oh, I couldn't do that. But that's just me. I don't do whatever you want.
Right? Interesting that works for you.
It works for you.
I'm sweating. I'm thinking about it. I'm sweating.
Thinking about it.
Exactly.
I have friends who, once they ended up with their spouse, always show up everywhere with their spouse. And I do not understand that either.
Yeah, I don't either.
I've never, ever understood that.
I'm constantly trying to ditch my spouse when he's home.
I
I'm
know.
like, seriously. If I go out with girlfriends, he's like, can I come? If he's home, it's a girls' night out. You're my babysitter. No, you can't come. But I don't get to have fun like that. I'm like, seriously, you are partying 5 nights a week. And this is 6 and 7 are the 2 you're at home. And the one night that I want to go party, you want to come too? Well, yeah, it's a party.
It's one of the things that I love the very most about my boyfriend is that he doesn't want to leave the house. So I'm like, cool, can you watch the kids?
Your boyfriend's very nice.
He did. You met him for 5 minutes.
No, I met him twice for 5 minutes.
Twice for 5
But
minutes.
he was very nice. I'm good at first
He was
impressions.
like 6 hours late because he doesn't want to go anywhere. He's like, I'll come pick you up.
Oh, I thought he was a nice guy.
He is. No, he's totally a nice guy, but he doesn't like leaving the house.
Yeah. Oh, well, to each his own.
Totally fine.
Okay. Well, I think this was very productive, very helpful conversation.
It was.
Good.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Thanks, Kristen.
What are you looking at, Dave?
I'm just looking at
Oh, all of a sudden Dave's face showed up. Oh, for everybody, I forgot to mention, Halston's sister had a baby. So Dave is graciously stepping in his place. So I know I'll start getting emails. Where's Halston? What happened to Halston? Halston's coming back. But Dave took care of me for 2 episodes, this one and yesterday. So thank you, Dave.
Where does she live?
Oregon.
Okay.
So yeah, he and it was like a planned delivery. So he knew when he needed to be there. So he was like, we're going to have to cancel those 2 podcasts. I was like, no, it took me a month to get Kristen.
Right.
To get Kristen and Jocelyn on. No. So Dave was very nice to step in. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your expertise, ladies.
It's
and
the
your
holidays already.
Lady.
Can you believe it?
Crazy.
I know.
I can't believe it. Are you coming to my ornament exchange?
Yes, I'm so excited.
Did I RSVP?
Thank you.
I don't know. I haven't checked.
Okay.
But you got it, right?
Yeah, I got it. You
Yeah.
text things to me now, which is great.
No, I don't have your current email in my
address.
Evite.
In your Evite,
So it
yeah. So I
goes
get
to
it by
your
text and then I
Yeah.
forget about it.
Oh,
But
I'm
I think I'm
sorry.
coming. No, it's okay.
Good. All right. For those of you who don't know, I host a ladies ornament exchange luncheon every year, and it's my act of gratitude for
That's
the
so
people that I
fun.
really appreciate in my life. So I love it. It's one of my favorite days.
Yay.
You don't
That's
bring
really fun.
anything. You just show up, and I cook everything.
Oh my
You bring an
gosh.
ornament.
And you bring an ornament to exchange,
fun.
yes. But it's a very special day to me. When I was pregnant with Georgia, I thought life's about to change, and I really appreciate my girlfriends. They're my family. And I need to do something once a year to just say I appreciate you, because I may not get to see some of you. They're
Yeah.
all spread out all over the
Mhm.
city, and we're all busy. So I started it 16 years ago. I've never skipped a year.
Wow.
It's been pretty awesome. It's really special. So I'm glad you're
I'm
coming.
excited. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be fun. All right. Well, thanks, ladies.
Thanks,
All right.
Sam.
And thanks for coming back, everybody.
Thanks, Dave.
My pleasure.